So we're going to talk about finding our 1004MC and how we can properly do that to also display the comparable properties that we used in creating the appraisal report. The best way to do this is while you're actually choosing the comparable properties that you're going to put into the report. And in doing that, we'll go to MRED, and this is actually a follow-up video to my neighborhood videos in regards to Webster Park and setting up a comparable sales analysis or comparable supply and demand analysis versus just your standard supply and demand analysis with no search criteria other than active and closed. What we did was we chose a price range in Spring Valley, Peru, LaSalle, and Oglesby. So now we're going to get a little more specific and choose our comparable properties. We'll assume that the home was a little older, but showed some updating, and we don't want to compare it with anything new, but we do want to avoid old stuff as well. So in here I will be a little selective, put my age range, put one story in, and also maybe add a bedroom count and perhaps a bathroom count. And from this list, I do want to change from 24 months to 12 months, assuming that I'm choosing my closed sales, and change from all actives and pending to just closed sales. So at this point, I'm choosing my closed comparables. I can go to view results, and we got lucky. There's only 4, and they just happen to be the best comparables in all of the land. So what I want to do here is download these comparables. So you see that I selected them, and if I don't want one, if I want to decide that one isn't comparable, I can uncheck that one. In doing that, I now will only download the 3 that are marked gray. Give me a second, I'm just going to take a drink here. Sorry, my voice is getting weird. So after we've selected our 3 that are gray and chose those to be the best comparables, we hit our download button and follow the same steps we normally do. We download for market conditions, followed by next, and then continue. And you'll see that file downloaded here. So those were our closed sales. We're going to want to go back to our worksheet and start to import the data for our 1004MC. So I import here and upload and pull that last file over. So this is just 3 closed sales that I chose to be comparable. However, based on the statistics or the criteria I put in, none of the other properties in all of LaSalle and Peru and Oglesby and Spring Valley seemed comparable or even viable to me. So this is what I've deemed comparable. So this is all that really has to show up in my 1004MC. If I had, thought 10 properties seemed somewhat comparable, I might have added those in here, but it just seemed like nothing else worked. And this is obviously a tutorial video, so bear with me and know that this is just for example purposes. Now I go back over to Connect MLS here, and I'm just going to hit OK, and that was from our download tab that we had used. I'm going to refine criteria, and let's look at some active listings. Sometimes we like to see if there's anything that may be listed a little too high here. So I'll remove my high end or maybe increase my high end to 250. And probably don't want to look at anything really below 180 since that's my lowest closed sale. And let's see if we have any active listings that seem comparable. We are limited. We only have one that even justifies or works with the sale price. So again, I'm going to download it. Now, if you're going to download all of the criteria or just one, you can just go ahead and download. But if you want to select from a list, you're going to need to do a little bit more. But since I do need 2 active listings per the client, I'm going to refine criteria and maybe loosen up the age range. And I'll go ahead and loosen up the style as well. view results. I know that this isn't the best way to do comping since I have stuff that's in there that you're not supposed to have in for comping, but this is again for example purposes. And oh, look at that. There's a property in Oglesby and a property in Peru that I just think are perfect. I'm gonna select those, and this one also looked pretty good, and this one looks pretty good as well. So at the top here, I'll download those selected results. I hit next, change my drop down to download for market conditions, followed by next, then continue, and you'll see it download at the bottom. If I go back to my tutorial tab, I've already imported some data in my 1004MC, so what we're going to be doing here is appending data to this list because we don't want to lose our closed data, and we do want to have these active listings that we deemed somewhat comparable. So first I'll hit File, Import, Upload, and then I get that last list here. And I'll drag those files in and replace current sheet as our typical go-to. In this situation, we're actually going to append to the sheet. So we're going to click Append Rows to Current Sheet. And what that does is adds in the new information, but doesn't wipe out these first lines that we've already filled in. So next I'm going to click Import. And you'll see that our headings also came with all the new data. So the best way to get rid of that is to go to the left side of the screen here where the number is that's associated with that row. You want to right click on that number as you're hovering over that number and scroll down to delete row. So I right click on the number, scroll down to delete row, and delete. Now we're left with what we decided were the most comparable active listings and closed sales within the market area that we deemed acceptable for choosing comparables for the subject property. So I can come over to my 1004MC tab and work on my comps grid now. I'm going to go over, so again I came from 1004MC and to the left. So import 1004MC to 1004MC. And here I can see the results of what we learned. It also gives me my price range and total number of comparable closed sales and active listings. At the bottom, we need to input the criteria that we use to obtain this data. So we had the subject's neighborhood boundaries, but we want to change that to Spring Valley, Peru, LaSalle, and Oglesby. Now, unlike our previous tutorial where we explained in the supply and demand secondary that we needed to change some of the commentary, this statement only regards the comparable properties from within these cities. So we have nothing to change. Comparable properties from within Spring Valley, Peru, LaSalle, and Oglesby were utilized in creating the 1004MC. So the 1004MC analysis versus supply and demand analysis, you may need to get a little more specific if you're writing up a supply and demand analysis. Explain that you pulled closed and active listings from the past 24 months that were valued at $150,000 or higher. In this, you can just be real general and call them comparable properties. In doing it, you loosen up what you deem as comparable versus having to explain exactly why, because sometimes explaining why I think can get us in trouble, being that opinion-based explanations are something that is easily argued. After you finished your 1004MC analysis by importing the comparable properties that you thought were best for the subject, and you've analyzed your 1004MC, in this analysis you can come through and decide if the X's are in the right spot. And in this report, I feel like these X's could all be stable since we don't have enough data to truly analyze what's going on in the market at this time. Actually, after looking at it, I would maybe suggest increasing there. I'm using the arrow keys on the keyboard to scroll through this. You can move around with the mouse or enter however you choose, but um, as I scroll through again, stable, stable, probably going to change this over to stable, and this decreasing, I don't know exactly why that would have marked itself, however, it's definitely increasing. And finally, this looks like it's decreasing, so that's interesting to see the list to sale price ratio drop so much. Oh, but again, very limited data, so we're not going to make that decreasing. Got to think about this stuff sometimes. And then lastly, we go to our comps grid. In this situation, it's pretty easy. We only had 3 closed sales, so we know that those are going to be our close, and then possibly 2 of the actives. In a longer list of 1004MC data, you'll have a longer selection of choices for the comp grid. But the 1004MC data is what dictates what shows up for you in your comparable drop-down menus. So if your 1004MC does not include a comparable property, then it will not show up in your drop-down menu. So the best thing you can do in trying to think about how these things all work together is know that you need to choose your comparables when choosing the data you're going to put in your 1004MC. When you do make the choices, you can come through and use the drop-down menus and import or write out comps as many times over as you'd like to. We do have a limit to 9 in this worksheet for the sake of load time that's already ridiculous. And once we get through all these comps being imported, we do need to, put in our prior sales, and in that you have the sale date, the sale price, and those can both be getting off the realist sheet. And then below that you have deed type and document number. So to get the resulting comment that you're looking for, you need to fill in this data. So 10/5/2015, and it was 178,000. And then we can leave assessor, and I'm using the arrow key down again to get through these 2 boxes. We can leave the effective date. We have a deed type, deed reg, and a document number, 43576. So after all of this loading of the comps that we just put in completes and this gets recognized, we're going to see in the next second or two that all this data along with this sentence down here will be filled out. I think at this point I've been working on this sheet for all these tutorials and removing things multiple times that it's just taking a couple extra seconds to load through. Sorry for the wait, guys. So the comparables filled themselves in, and then we have our comparable statement regarding the prior sale. This stuff can be edited right here. You can fill in little boxes using the drop downs that would show up in the report, or you can just wait till you get the information in the report, which we'll go over in another video. Any questions, definitely ask, or any improvements, any ideas, just let me know. There isn't much that we can't add to this. However, sometimes some of the data that gets pulled from the MLS is limited, and this is only data from the MLS, so it all does need to be verified through the assessor and other regular sources. So this video covered the comp grid, the 1004MC, the import 1004MC. If you missed any of the previous videos regarding the neighborhood supply and demand primary and the supply and demand secondary, then I'd recommend going back and watching those because you'll see how we got set up to this point. One final item I wanted to talk about in this tutorial, I'll have to go back to my MLS up here at the top, and it's this tab, and we'll take a look at how to add a closed sale that perhaps was from the prior year or you want to include in your comp grid that didn't show up in your 1004MC. And this is not a way to get out of putting all your sales in your 1004MC and making it a reasonable proximity. But say you have a dated sale or maybe a 2-year-old sale and you just want to grab that sale rather than search the whole MLS for it. So back in the MLS, I'm just going to use file as an example, but I'm getting an MLS number and copying it. Then I'm coming over to the main MLS page and putting that MLS number in the search. And what I have here is that comparable and that comparable alone. So I wanted to download that data. I want to select next. Drop down to download for market conditions. Select next. Continue. Then I have that pop up down here at the bottom. So I go back into my tutorial sheet and then my 1004MC import tab, or import 1004MC, excuse me. You file, import, upload. We're just going to drop that single comparable in here. And this is the same method as we just followed through with getting our closed and actives, but we're going to append rows to current sheet. We are going to have to remove those headers again. So row 9 in this case is all the headers. I'm going to delete that. And now I imported just a single comparable. And if it was out of date, it wouldn't show up in my 1004MC analysis. If it's an active listing like it is right now, it is going to change the numbers of the 1004MC analysis. But this is just for example purposes. So this would be a more typical function you'd follow in order to get a comparable into the report that isn't in date or is a couple years old or something like that. Also, knowing how to append and when to append is key to really creating an MLS or a 1004MC based on what you really deemed comparable, and putting out a product like that shows that you know what you're doing, shows that you know how to put together an MC and what this form really means, because it can mean something. Sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes you're limited on the data that you can use, but other times the form can actually be useful in setting or establishing or reporting trends for comparable properties that are within the market area of the subject, and the market area being whatever you deem as the market area, not the neighborhood. Those are two different things, but the market area being, you know, all the cities or all the neighborhoods that you chose your comparable properties from. There is an overview video if you have any other questions regarding the tabs that I didn't address here, the verifying tab, the inspecting appraiser tab, which you can just mark, the inspection information. This can all be filled in just with the drop downs. Here we want to make sure we have effective age and total economic life. And finally the E&O tab, which I've gone over in the just overview video. Later on we can get into our regression analysis, which again is in the hidden sheets, and there's a regression analysis run off the primary import data and the regression analysis that can be run for just comparable data from the 1004MC. There is currently not a secondary data one, followed by FHA commentary, which we can click to see a stock list of the FHA commentary and make some notes. I'll take a quick glance at that just so you can see what I'm talking about. But in here you could mark with X anything that applies to the subject property, and later on when a processor's coming through the report, she can come in here, or he can come in here and look for FHA commentary and copy it as you wrote it in the worksheet. And then just so everyone's clear, these BG files, anything starting with a BG, those are database files for the worksheet that do different functions and keep the stuff behind the scenes that doesn't need to be stared at every time. Feel free to wander around the worksheet. You're not going to mess anything up, but I think I should have pretty much covered everything we need to cover in these few videos. Thanks a lot.